Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about one of ancient history's most brilliant and, let's be honest, most controversial figures, Philip II of Macedon. Now, we all know his son, Alexander the Great, but what about the father? This is the man who inherited a kingdom on the brink of total collapse and turned it into the undisputed master of Greece. The question is, how in the world did he do it?
And that really gets to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? Was his incredible rise to power all part of some grand long-term plan he'd been cooking up for years? Or was he just a political genius, an amazing improviser, who was brilliant at seizing opportunities as they came along? Did he always intend to dominate the Greek city-states? Or did he just sort of stumble into it after one victory after another?
To get to the bottom of this, we're going to have to look at the evidence. And for that, we're calling on three key witnesses from the ancient world, each with a totally different take on the man. First, you've got Demosthenes. Think of him as the prosecution, the fiery Athenian politician who saw Philip as the ultimate supervillain. Then there's Diodorus, the historian. He's trying to give us the just the facts account, piecing it all together. And finally, we have Justin, a Roman writer who saw Philip as this devious but, you have to admit, incredibly effective king.
Our story starts in 359 BC, and Macedon is an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, it is a kingdom on the verge of just disappearing from the map. Their king is dead, their army's been shattered in battle, and enemies are circling like vultures. The Illyrians, the Paeonians, the Thracians, they are all ready to carve this place up. This is the mess that Philip inherits.
So what does Philip do? He doesn't panic. His first moves are just lightning fast and incredibly decisive. Diodorus, our historian, tells us he gives these amazing, eloquent speeches that just light a fire under his demoralized soldiers. Then, in 358, he doesn't just defend. He attacks. He marches straight at the Illyrians and absolutely smashes their army. We're talking 7,000 killed in a single battle. He immediately turns around and does the same to the Paeonians. By 356, he strong-armed his neighbors into becoming his allies. So you have to ask yourself, is this a guy just trying to save his kingdom? Or is this step one of something much, much bigger?
But here's where things get really incredible. He doesn't just win battles, he fundamentally changes the game of warfare. He creates the ancient world's first truly national professional army. I mean, think about it. Down south, the famous Greek city-states are still relying on part-time citizen soldiers and hiring mercenaries. Philip, he's got guys training year-round. He equips them with the sarissa, this insane 18-foot-long pike that turns his infantry into an unstoppable hedgehog of death. And maybe the most revolutionary move of all? He promotes his officers based on merit, on talent, not on who their dad was. That was a total game changer.
So, with his kingdom finally secure, Philip starts looking south, towards Greece. And what does he see? Well, the Greek city-states are doing what they do best, fighting each other. This time, it's a conflict known as the Third Sacred War. And for Philip, all this chaos is a golden opportunity. It's his invitation to the party.
Now, according to our witness Justin, Philip doesn't just barge in uninvited, he gets a formal request. A group called the Phocians had sacked the most sacred site in all of Greece, the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Philip's allies begged him to step in, and he plays this perfectly. He doesn't show up as a conqueror, he shows up as a crusader. Justin writes that he even had his men wear crowns of laurel, casting himself as the champion of the god Apollo. He wins a huge victory, and suddenly, this Macedonian barbarian is being hailed as a religious hero all across Greece.
But hold on. Our man in Athens, Demosthenes, is having none of it. He is basically screaming from the rooftops that this is all a sham. He's convinced Philip is nothing more than a master manipulator. Demosthenes says Philip has a history of doing this, from taking cities like Amphipolis and Potidaea. He argues Philip uses religion and empty promises to fool everyone into thinking he's their friend, and then, when their guard is down, he strikes.
So how is he paying for all of this? Well, Philip had a secret weapon that underpinned his entire strategy. Money. Lots of it. He gets control of these gold mines, renames a city after himself, Philippi, of course, and Diodorus tells us he re-engineers the whole operation to pull in over 1,000 talents a year. That is a staggering amount of wealth, a war chest that changes absolutely everything.
And he didn't just use that money to pay his soldiers. He didn't just fight his enemies. He bought them. Diodorus makes this crucial point that Philip enlarged his kingdom far more by the use of gold than of arms. Take the powerful city of Olynthus. He besieged it, but the real attack was happening on the inside. He bribed the chief officials. The city fell through treachery. Then Philip enslaved the population and leveled the entire city to the ground. It was a terrifying warning to anyone else who dared to oppose him. For years after this, a tense, uneasy peace held between Philip and Athens. But let's be real, nobody trusted anybody. It was basically a Cold War. The treaty they'd signed had settled nothing, and both sides were just looking for an edge, waiting for the other one to slip up. You could just feel that a final massive confrontation was coming.
And then things start to spiral. An Athenian general attacks one of Philip's allies. Philip protests, but Demosthenes uses it to whip Athens into a war frenzy. So Philip responds, and he goes straight for the jugular. He lays siege to Perinthus and Byzantium. Why is that a big deal? Because that's where Athens gets its grain. He's threatening to starve the city out. This forces Athens' hand. They and their allies send in the fleet, and Philip is actually forced to retreat. And that's it. The gloves are finally off. But you still have to wonder, was Philip cornered into this fight, or was this the final conflict he'd wanted all along?
This leads to the climax. Philip marches his army south, deep into the heart of Greece. In a last-ditch, desperate move, Demosthenes brokers an alliance between the two great rivals, Athens and Thebes. The fate of the Greek city-states, their entire way of life, now hangs on the outcome of one single colossal battle. The battle is fought at Chaeronea in 338 BC, and it is an absolute, decisive victory for Macedon. Philip's professional army, led by himself and his teenage son Alexander, just annihilates the Greek forces. Diodorus says 1,000 Athenians died and 2,000 were captured. With this one battle, centuries of Greek history are completely upended. Philip of Macedon is now the undisputed master of Greece. So what do you do when you've just conquered Greece? Well, look at what Philip does next. He offers surprisingly lenient terms to Athens, his bitterest enemy. But he punishes Thebes brutally, even installing a Macedonian garrison right in their citadel. Then, he summons all the Greek states to Corinth and creates a new federal league. And guess who they elect as hegemon, the supreme general of all Greeks? Philip, of course. And he immediately gives them a new mission, a united war of revenge against the Persian Empire.
And this brings us right back to our central question. So let's see what our witnesses concluded. Was this invasion of Persia his true aim all along? Was conquering Greece just a necessary first step? Or was it a brilliant improvisation after he'd already won?
Well, surprise, surprise. The evidence is conflicting. Demosthenes was certain. Philip was a tyrant with a long-held plan to enslave Greece, period. Diodorus saw a brilliant nation-builder who enlarged his kingdom through his own valor, and Justin paints a picture of this ruthless opportunist who simply exploited Greek disunity for his own gain, looking on, as he put it, as from a watchtower, just waiting for his chance to strike. Ultimately, the sources just don't give us a single, clear answer. And we will never know for sure, because in 336 BC, just as his great Persian expedition was getting started, Philip was assassinated by one of his own bodyguards. It leaves us with one of history's great what-ifs. Was mastering Greece his final goal, or was it just the first step in a plan so vast it would take his son Alexander the Great to complete it?